ये फंस गया सीएम।
तो चलिए शुरू करते हैं।
Hi guys, welcome to Screen Guru. I hope your HSC preparations are going super great. In today's video, we are going to cover unit number 2, which is about poems. The very first thing that comes to my mind when somebody says poem is figures of speech. What is so important about them is that figures of speech are used in poems to glorify poems. Let's take inversion for example. I was told not to climb that mountain. Very normal, we might use this in our day to day life. Not to climb the mountain, I was told. This is an example of inversion. This is a very random sentence, okay? But when I used inversion, it sounded poetic. It didn't sound as if it has come from a textbook or this, like somebody has said this actually in a real conversation. So it feels that it is out of a poem, or she wept an ocean of tears. Now, in our day to day life, we would rarely say that she wept an ocean of tears. What we are most likely to say is she cried a lot, she cried, her eyes dry. These are a few phrases that we use, but she wept an ocean of tears is an example of hyperbole, which is used in poems usually. So, figures of speech are a very essential aspect of poems. I'm going to mention a few figures of speech that have occurred throughout your textbook. Make sure that you understand what they are. Remember the examples, and in your textbook, you can just mark each line with what figure of speech it represents. Let's start with figures of speech first.
A few inches later.
So we start with figures of speech now. A very common figure of speech that occurs quite a few times in poems is personification. It basically means a human quality is given to an inanimate object, like an angry bird. Why is it personification? Is because the emotion of anger, only humans are capable of portraying it. A living thing like a bird cannot be able to portray anger. So it is basically a human quality that is given to an inhuman object. Alliteration is when the sound of the syllable repeats. Repetition is when whole words or whole phrases repeat. Hyperbole, as its name suggests, it is exaggeration. Onomatopoeia means words that denote sounds like ringing bells, rustling leaves, chirping birds, woofing dogs, meowing cats, etc., etc. I have mentioned the examples beside it, so you can pause the video and read them to understand that figure of speech better. Oxymoron is when you group two opposite ideas together. Now, you might confuse this with antithesis, but the difference between oxymoron and antithesis is that antithesis in antithesis, two words are kept at a distance, like joys and sorrows are part of a life. But in oxymoron, uh, those two words are taken as a phrase by itself, like the party was pretty bad. So pretty in itself is also an adjective, bad in itself is also an adjective. But when you say pretty bad, these two words are describing a similar thing, the same thing. Pretty is describing bad. This, I hope you're understanding oxymoron. Or the party was awfully good. You actually mean that the party was extremely good, but when you say awfully good, it means oxymoron. Synecdoche is when you use a single word to represent a larger idea, like Russia is attacking Ukraine. Here, actually, Russia by itself is a whole nation which represents many people. Who in reality is actually behind the attacks? It is their president Putin. So it also happens vice versa. And metaphor is also very simple. It is an indirect comparison, like time is money. Direct comparison is called as simile. Transferred epithet is when you give the feeling of one object to another. She spent sleepless nights. Nights are not sleepless. The girl is sleepless. So, sleeplessness of the girl, here we transfer it to nights. This is why it is transferred epithet. Inversion is when words are purposefully not arranged according to their grammatical order to give it a poetic effect. Like on the deck, the rover takes his stand. Apostrophe is when you are addressing someone who is not present, like, oh Christ, oh God, oh mother, something like that. These are some very, very common figures of speech that are occurring throughout. Let's go ahead to the next concept.
Just then.
The next important thing in unit number 2 is rhyme scheme. As the name suggests, rhyme scheme is what you use when you want to mention the rhyming scheme of the poem. How it works? You take the last word of each line. If word number A and word number 2 are rhyming, you give them an alphabet. We start with A and we go through the series of all alphabets as and when we go throughout the poem. For example, let's take the poem Indian Weaver. First paragraph has 4 lines and the ending words of this paragraph are day, gay, wild and child. So day and gay rhyme, so it will be A. Wild and child rhyme, so it will be B and B. So the rhyming scheme of first paragraph of the poem Indian Weaver is A, B, B. Take the second paragraph for example. The second paragraph also has 4 lines and the ending words of these 4 lines are night, bright, green and queen. Night and bright rhyme, so it will be C. Green and queen rhyme, so it will be D and D. Why did I go to C and D is because I am talking about the rhyming scheme of the whole poem. If in exam they give you just the second paragraph, okay, no first paragraph, no last paragraph, just the second paragraph, you always start with the letter A. Even if they start from middle or they start from the end, do not go according to what you have marked for the whole poem. Mark according to what phrases have been mentioned in the question paper. For example, if only second paragraph was mentioned in the question paper and they are asking you to write the rhyme scheme of that particular paragraph, now that I am saying child, night, bright, night, bright, green and queen are C, D, D. But if this comes in exam, it will be A, B, B because you always start with A. I hope you have understood this. Next, the third paragraph also has 4 lines and the ending letters of these lines are still, chill, cloud and shroud. So it will be E, F. So the rhyming scheme of the full poem, which has 12 lines, is A, B, C, D, E, and F. What happens when, let's say, after we have day, gay, wild and child, after this, if May rhymes with day and gay, then it will be A, B and A because it rhymes with day and gay. So understand the concept of it. It is actually a very, very, very scoring question because there is nothing to really explore about it. You just understand the concept and then you write it. Next we go on to doing poem appreciation. But before that, there is yet another thing that you have to understand is that some poems are a free verse, like Song of the Open Road. The lines are not equal, and no words are rhyming actually. So such poems are called free verse, and basically there is no rhyme has no context, rhyme has no importance in those poems. What the poem really trying to do is give out a strong message. That is all there is to that poem. Now, why is it important to understand? Is because all these things come in handy when you have to do a poem appreciation. For example, let's take the poem Have You Earned Your Tomorrow? Your book mentions what all things you're supposed to mention in the poem appreciation. First, poem title, poet, and something a little what the poem is really about. This you can do by yourself. Now, what is the theme of the poem? Theme basically means central idea of the poem. So, have you earned your tomorrow? What is the theme of this poem? It talks about how our own moral values are important in life. For example, let's say that let's take a very hypothetical example. There is a topper in a class, and that person scores the top scores in all subjects. But in real life, that not real life, but I mean apart from studies, that person is very rude to other people. That person does not respect elders. That person is very selfish. What do you think is going to happen to this person when they step out in the real world? If you do not have any life values like kindness, helping others, if you do not have some, if others do not think that you are capable of helping them out, then it, all other achievements in your life really don't matter, is what the poet is trying to tell you. Then poetic devices. I still remember I used to think that poetic devices might be something very, very difficult that poets use, and like there is maths involved and stuff. But eventually I got to realize that poetic devices are your figures of speech. So figures of speech, as I mentioned earlier, they are used to glorify a poem. They are used to add a poetic effect to the poem, because otherwise the poem will sound just like a paragraph or a prose. So poetic devices are your figures of speech. What figures of speech are mentioned in the poem? Not mentioned. What figures of speech are used in the poem? A lot of oxymoron is used, like selfish and pure and things like that. We also have alliteration quite a few times. We have antithesis quite a few times. So you mention about the figures of speech that are used in poem, and I would say that try to remember as much poems as you can, so that you can write exactly where the figure of speech is used. Then you go on to mention the special features of the poem. For example, in this poem, Have You Earned Your Tomorrow, a very, very, very peculiar aspect of this poem is that the poet is asking such questions that will make you introspect. Have you really earned your tomorrow? Are you really kind to people? Are you really doing something good in your life, or are you just about yourself? So these are some very harsh, it might sound harsh, it might sound philosophical, it might sound one-sided, but it is true. The poem absolutely makes sense in today's world. So this is what you have to do, and then you go on to write your own opinion about it. Why I took example of this poem is that all of us have had a really hard time in the pandemic, and everybody struggled with many different things. So you can connect the pandemic and the message that this poem is giving you. I'm sure you helped some other people, you received help from some other people when you were facing some difficulties. So the importance of humanity, the importance of being kind to one another, the importance of helping out whenever you can up to the best of your capabilities and basically ignoring the bad and continuing to do what is the best that you can do is what the poem teaches you. So in your own opinion, you can write about your own anecdotes, you can share what you experienced in your life where this poem came, the message of this poem came into your use and things like that. But most importantly, it is important that you understand the theme of the poem. Once you understand the theme of the poem, rest everything is super easy. So you can think previously about what poem appreciation you are going to do of each and every poem. That would just save you your time. Don't fret out. Do your best and keep on practicing. Practicing is the key, and all the best.
Thousands of tears later.
So please whatever. Please I want to reach 1 million.